Oh, we will.
Are we readjourned?
We're reconvening.
We're reconvening.
Yeah. So thank you, Mel, for joining us. You're a regular face here at the Port of Port Angeles. We appreciate your input and your interest, and very much appreciate you applying for the Port Commissioner position in District 2. So this is going to be, we're going to conduct this interview in fewer than 45 minutes, or 45 minutes. And so the first item will give you about 5 minutes to answer that, and then if we allocate about 3 minutes per question, then we end up with enough time at the end for Connie, if she has any follow-up questions, or if I have any follow-up questions, not just on the questions that you're responding to verbally today, but also from your application. If either of us had any follow-up questions there, we would, we'd have that opportunity to ask that at that time. And then lastly, Connie has one question that she's asked each of the 6 applicants today, and I have 2, and so we will ask those questions that are not on this list. And just for your information, Mr. Brent Berry had informed us, and I think we all forgot that he had in an email, that he was going to be on vacation until March 5th, so we will interview him on Tuesday is the expectation, and then we will likely, the plan right now is announce who we will select a week from today. So just letting you know that's the plan going forward here. So any questions?
No.
Okay, if not, Connie, I'll let you take it away.
So the very first question is to ask you to tell us in 5 minutes or less what your message would be on the campaign trail.
Well, to start with, I'm familiar with the port. I've been here for 20 years, and I've been watching the port for 20 years. I've been a port tenant for, I believe, 20 years as well. Mostly my association has been with the airport. However, I have been interested in other issues, specifically those relating to the economic development relationship with the port and how it can affect the community at large. I was Len Biles' campaign manager when he ran for port commissioner, and the issue then was developing the topside repair industry that was nascent here. And the issue at that time was whether we were going to allow a company primarily in, shall we say, the Oregon, I don't want to actually run the ship operation here as it was. As it turns out, that company is running the ship repair operation. Vigor Industries basically runs it now. However, we are primarily a very large topside repair organization. It's been an extremely good thing that happened, and Len was the one who pushed it. Len was also the individual who pushed the other commissioners at the time to allow the sale of the waterfront property so that we would have Westport Marine. Those are 2 very important industries along the waterfront. Those industries literally support a good portion of the community. Other than that, the timber industry has been the largest and probably the most well-known and oldest of all the industries that we have to deal with here. However, it in itself is not going to carry what we basically need here. We need to expand the port's capabilities, specifically with those areas that right now are vacant, and I consider the airport industrial park as basically vacant. The port's done a very good job in continuing what industries that were there, or shall we say have come there, specifically ACTI. And the new composite project that's going on is very good. Looks like it has potential. However, we have to look towards new industries, things that are not here yet. And part of the problem is we don't really analyze, first of all, what we need. What we need are industries that are, shall we say, high value, low volume, primarily because of the logistics situation that we have. We have primarily two means of contact with the outside world. One of them is Highway 101. The other one is the airport. Barges are not really good, fast product shipment. They're good for bulk. But we do not have a port that is, shall we say, a roll-on, roll-off type situation. We don't have that kind of product capability here. So we should look for things that are, as I said, high value. High value can mean any type of craft-oriented industry. And craft-oriented, I mean that required skilled workmen, not necessarily in the high-tech industries, but what we call craft-oriented, being those people who can work with their hands as well as their heads and produce products that are of high value. And I think I mentioned to you, Colleen, once before that an industry that came to mind immediately when I started looking at the 100,000 square foot building, since it was a woodworking facility, was handcrafted high-value furniture. People here know how to work with wood. Our schools do teach somewhat of a program in cabinet making and carpentry. That's one area. We have a small group of companies that are in SQUIM, one of them specifically that builds screw machine parts right now out of titanium for the marine industry. There is an extremely high value and extremely high volume part, which is interesting, but extremely small. Their whole concept of being able to ship out of here was we have air freight, and we don't have the congestion that exists in the I-5 corridor. Now, those are two examples of things that we should be looking at. So my real concern, and something that I really would like to see happen, is the port develop a good marketing program to be able to sell to the outside world what we have here. And what we have is excellent capabilities with respect to real estate. The port has the facilities. In fact, the port is the largest land owner or holder of industrial property in the whole of the county. That's number one. Number two, we also have an educational capability here. The high school has an extremely good industrial arts program, a machinist program that I think is better than I've seen in most of the schools that I'm familiar with in California. They produce qualified machinists that are ready to get jobs, and they do get jobs, but not here. All right, so that is a capability. We have a welding program at the college, which is an example of a good skilled crafts program. So these are the things in combination with the EDC to help promote the port as a viable economic entity is something that I personally would love to see happen.
Okay.
And I have not seen it happen yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So the second question we have is, what port lines of business do you best understand, and which ones are new to you?
Well, I fairly well understand the topside repair industry. I understand the what we might call ship repair, namely Platypus's operation. I understand boat building. And I also understand the aviation capabilities that we have. The least understanding I have is the timber industry in itself. However, I believe that the port already has a fairly good representation in that area.
On the commission, you mean?
Yes. It's a well-known, shall we say, the timber industry is a well-known quantity here. The port is set up to deal with it. But it's the one I know the least about.
Tell us about the opportunities and challenges that you see for two of the port's lines of business.
The challenges are, to begin with, getting businesses to come here. Opportunities, I think I've mentioned in what my extemporaneous address was. We have facility capability, and we have a tremendous capability with respect to potential employers or employment, employees, I should say. What we do have a problem is in effect the marketing of what we have. We haven't been marketing it. And an understanding of the logistics problems that we have. So consequently, when we talk about, shall we say, the marinas, we have a good marina here, but it's very limited in its capability. And I was on the marina committee several years back. It can only handle maximum 50-foot boats. That's it. The turn capability is limited by basically the space between the slips. So therefore, that is the limit. We only have a market that is right here with respect to, and that's been pretty much proven by the studies that were done. What we're trying to look for marinas is something that we don't have access to, and that is larger boats and a place to put them. So if we're looking for a capability such as turning this into a destination resort where larger boats are generally, shall we say, housed, berthed, it's just a matter of what do we have to market. Neither one of the marinas that we have are really suited for it. Also, I think that what the port has done with respect to the business of running marinas was very well taken care of here at Boathaven. I feel the same situation should occur at John Wayne. Instead of the port directly running John Wayne, we could license it out or release it out the same way it has been done with Chuck Ferris and now, I hope, Masco or Masco, whatever. So it's just a matter of marketing what we have and also looking for ways of being more efficient, what the port can or cannot do with respect to the facility or the people and staff that it has. I think the idea of that's one is being more efficient with respect to the marina operation right off. As far as the airport is concerned, which is one of my homes, I feel that the best thing that can be done there is to take the industrial park lands and make them ready for occupancy. One of the things that we don't have here is ready-to-build sites. We have plenty of real estate. Real estates have no infrastructure, so consequently, attracting a tenant becomes a problem. The tenant has been told in the past, you come and we'll make things ready for you. Generally, for getting infrastructure and permitting, et cetera, it takes at least a year. People who want to bring a business here would like to be up and running in 6 months. If they're going to build a building, that's a little bit longer, but generally the same thing. So I believe the port needs a quick build permitting system with the city. The infrastructure is also with the city. There have been several site plans that have already been done by Reed Middleton for the port with respect to some of the industrial park sites. None of that has been accomplished. None of it's been done. Those plans were paid for and nothing was done with them. These are the things that I find that the port has been comparatively lax at doing, and the opportunities to do are there. The main thing I feel is necessary is the port needs a marketing plan. If necessary, it needs to go out and find people who can produce that marketing plan. I think that's about it.
How are we doing on time?
Okay.
Okay. So number 4, do you see a current weakness in the way the port operates? And if so, what would you do to change it?
I just mentioned it,
Okay.
that I don't think the port does a good enough job in marketing its own facilities.
Okay.
And what I do about it is there are people in this community that have capabilities that are far in excess of any of consulting organizations that may be hired. I'd like to see what they could do first.
Great, thank you.
What do you consider to be the most challenging aspect when dealing with the public?
The most challenging aspect is getting your ideas across. And that is open discussion is the best way, but the press is another way to do it. But the personal touch is much better. That's one of the things that I liked about the way Lynn did business. Len would visit the tenants. Len was one-on-one with all of the tenants at least once a month. Spent a lot of time here on the waterfront in order to get the topside repair operation really up and running. It was wonderful, and also he directly appealed to the public through the press by having one-on-one conversations with the press, so that in effect his ideas were put forth, and that's how in effect we wound up getting Westport. So that's the way I would deal with it. Would be very much the same way Len did.
What do you see as customer service policies and goals for our stakeholders and tenants? So this is about customer service.
Since I'm a customer, one of the things that's necessary to begin with, and this is something that I've been working on for 10 years or so, is an understanding that the port has the capability of being able to foster a tenant's requirements to help them, rather than just be the rent collector. The way I look at it is I am a lessee. And instead of the port coming to me with a lease that is what I would consider penurious, I would like to see a lease that was in effect business friendly. Not making quote unquote demands, but rather saying, how can we help you? That's how you attract business. as well. As Len did, he walked into a tenant's operation and talked to them, found out what they required, what was wrong, what they thought should be happening. And it worked.
Okay, what policy and procedure topics would you be most interested in exploring if you were appointed?
Primary economic development. I really think that the port really is the primary engine for economic development in this area. It has the facilities, it has the land, it has the things that are necessary to attract business. So consequently, I'm looking at how do I attract business here? I've given some thought to it already, and I've had discussions with Bill Greenwood with respect to how he would go about doing it, what his thoughts are, and I think we agree pretty much on what could be done. Specifically, as I said, marketing.
All right. What is your experience in finance and understanding of financial documents?
Well, to start with, I have owned 3 homes, 2 in California and 1 here. Therefore, I've had to have construction loans as well as mortgage financing on that part. As a CEO of a small corporation, I dealt with banks with respect to getting, shall we say, bridge loans, et cetera, in order to make things happen. So I have somewhat of an idea as to how it goes with respect to dealing with the financial industry.
I think it was like budgets, financial statements of a business, of a port.
Well, I ran my own company.
Do you have enough time available for port meetings and other community obligations?
I'm retired.
I was retired too.
Well, I'm sorry, you're one of those people who take on maybe more than you literally should. All right. No, I have the time.
Thank you.
How should the Port Commission, so this is about the commission, how should the Port Commission interface with other public agencies and organizations?
To begin with, the EDC is not a formal organization or not a formal jurisdiction. It's an organization that is volunteer primarily. But there's one that I feel is necessary in order to really cooperate with or work with. The city, the county, city governments primarily on how they can provide services that we need, the port needs. The county in the same fashion. We actually provide a third leg on their stool, that's about it. The port is an unusual governmental agency because it is also a business, which is part of the RCW charter. It's the only jurisdictional or governmental agency that can do business. Buy and sell property, lease property, etc. So it has a function that needs those, shall we say, can assist or work with the other governmental agencies with respect to finding out what their needs are as well. Right now we have a little situation that goes between the airport and the city. It's called the trees. The way that was handled I think the port could have done a better job in getting the city to cooperate earlier on, and avoiding what has happened since, and consequently costing more money and more time. The port did not really promote the issue, didn't publicize what was going on well enough so that the people in the community at first objected. After it was explained to some of them, specifically those that lived just on the east side of the park, they came to realize that it wasn't something that was going to hurt them, it would be of help. But by that time, the city had come up with a proposal that the FAA wasn't going to buy. So now it goes back to ground zero and we start all over again, and that's where we're at. It could have been done much better.
Okay, thinking back to past life experiences when you made an important decision, tell us about a decision you made that you later regretted and what you learned from that experience.
I'll be very personal about that. I regretted my first marriage.
You're the second person to say that.
Well, that was the first experience that I really regretted. I learned a lot from it. Since then, I've been married for 54 years. At least I learned how to get along with somebody else. All right. Business experiences. Had an early business experience with an individual that I thought I went to school with and I thought was a fairly good friend, and learned very quickly that he had a propensity for doing something that was a little bit bad for the nature of the business, and that he was error prone. I got out of that relationship and learned very carefully to find out what the other individuals that I was dealing with since in my own company, what specifically were their goals, rather than just exactly what I wanted them to do. After I was able to analyze that, it came out pretty good, but I lost a little chunk of money on that first deal. But I learned very quickly to do a little better analysis with respect to the employee and the associates that I was working with.
Okay, thank you. What do you wish to accomplish during this appointed term as a port commissioner?
Well, I would like very much to increase the port's tenants. Namely, around the airport, they have to be tenants because they can't buy any of the airport property. It's FAA encumbered, so therefore it has to be leased. But to increase the tenancy there by virtue of occupying the buildings that are vacant, it's number one. Number two is, in effect, making or getting the airport industrial parks areas better prepared for accepting tenants. Also, I'd like to work on the leases. I feel the leases, there's a lot to be done there that can make them business friendly.
Okay. So now, do you have any follow-up question, Connie?
I'd like to ask a question on your very last statement here. There's a lot to be done on leases to make them business friendly. Give me one or two thoughts on that.
The lease, at least our lease, and I know that several other tenants having the same lease, was originally designed to be a lessee of a part of a building, like a snacks stand or a gift shop or something of that nature, which makes a statement at the end of the lease that when the lease is terminated or is over with, that the lessee is responsible for, in effect, removing any leasehold improvements, and or the port owns those improvements, and if the port wants them removed, the lessee then has the responsibility of paying for the removal, one way or the other. Well, that's fine if you're in that kind of a situation, but what if you're a lessee that builds a whole building, which is purpose-built? What happens then is the port then gets a free building. The ability to sell that building is encumbered by a clause that says it reverts to the port's ownership. To be able to get financing to run a business or to do anything within that structure is next to impossible to do. In fact, we have several people who cannot get financing, but they would want to buy into, for instance, our condo association. That's a problem. It literally keeps business away. So, to begin with, the leases are we leasing vacant land, or are we leasing a building, a part of a building? So the leases have to start from ground up and start as being business friendly. But I'm more than willing to sell our condo association to the port, more than willing to, at an appraised value at the end of the lease. Or I'd be very glad to negotiate a new lease. But to have that sitting there as a clause in the lease literally tells business to go away. And it makes it very difficult, unless you have cash in hand, to do any business.
I do not have any follow-up questions. Okay, so here's the question I've asked all the candidates.
Okay, here's the hooker.
Do you want to drink water?
No, I'm fine.
It's really
My
not
mouth
that
is
bad.
always dry, and I've always gotten very used to it.
Historically, the log business has been the port's bread and butter for its operating revenue. What do you see as the future for this line of business and for timber products?
Logs are always going to be here. Hopefully, because they're well managed. A good friend of mine is John David Crow, and I think he has a very responsible attitude towards his business with respect to plant, replant, harvest, etc. We will always have logs. The question is do we have a market? Now, currently, we have a little bit of a problem that the market is declining, and so consequently, other people are filling it with lower priced product. Right. What can we do about it? That's up to, shall we say, Green Crow and the other timber companies around here. But if the boats aren't going to be sent here, the deals can't be made, then it becomes a problem. But considering the individuals that I know in the business, it's going to be here for a long time. And the port should, by virtue of its responsibility as a terminal business, have the capability of moving their product.
Okay, so I have a two-part question and then followed by a simple yes or no. So this two-part addresses your experience and then your philosophy. So please share your experience in evaluating risk in a contract. What's your philosophy? No, Siri. This happens all the time. I start talking and somehow my phone starts recording me. Anyway, what's your philosophy in evaluating risk versus new opportunity and our mission to grow our economy? So I'm asking about your experience and then also your philosophy about risk.
Well, I ran a business which is in itself a risk. The nature of the business was a consulting engineering firm, design and engineering. The problem is how do you expand a company of that nature since you are not selling a product, you are selling a service. So the evaluation then was to convince banks or other lending institutions so that I could expand an operation or lease a bigger building or whatever it was, that the service was in effect basically sound financially, and I had a decent business history. So I understand the nature of that. Okay. Now, as far as the personal philosophy is concerned, I operate on a very simple golden rule philosophy: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, sometimes it doesn't work too well in business, but I found it works fairly well personally because it builds respect. And my clients respected me, and I had them for many years. I sold the business to two of my employees and left. They kept it going, and I helped them for several years afterwards. But the whole concept is, if you're going to provide a product or a service to anybody, you want to be able to come back to that individual and ask them to buy again. And if they're not going to buy again because you've given them a raw deal, that's it. So it's do unto others. Treat your clients the way you would generally want to be treated.
So how do you evaluate that in a contract? When you're looking at a contract and if you were the port?
Okay. That's the toughie, because then again, the port has specific obligations to survive itself. It is a service in itself. So therefore, your part, or the port's part of the contract, has to be to protect its interests with respect to, so to say, the amount of money it's going to charge for the piece of real estate or the facility. So it's protecting one's interest, but at the same time, not, this is difficult because I'm going through this right now, not expecting anything from the port that in effect would become a gift. And I understand the whole concept of gifting with respect to contracts with the port, etc. All I'm looking for is what is known as a fair deal. Okay, it's hard to define a fair deal. It is, am I getting serviced the way I feel is good for my purposes, and is the port not giving me anything other than what the port is, shall we say, within its capability to give and still provide the services that it's supposed to. For instance, in our lease right now, it says that we are supposed to provide our own trash and our own water and our own power, etc. When we set up our buildings, we set up to do that. Every one of our tenants, or not tenants, partners, the situation provides its own trash. Now, the port, reading that in the lease, just not too long ago, came up and said, you're not, we're going to charge you $17.50 a month per building for trash. And I said, we don't use your trash system. Why should we pay for it? We provide our own service. The other thing was water. We built our buildings. We put in, building number 1, we put in a water system. Building number 2, we put in a water system. The first building was metered because we thought we were having to meter it. As far as we're concerned, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. The city came back and told us, you don't have to meter your water, the port's already paying for it. So it was our knowledge at that time that the port was paying for the water. Nobody was billing us for it. But then all of a sudden, you're going to get billed for water. Now, we don't mind shall we say, having those issues put in a lease because in effect, but if it's going to be looked upon as being a bone of contention, as it is, it costs the port more to read the meter than it does for the water that we're using.
So at this time, can you verbally commit to running again for Port Commissioner in 2017?
At this time, but I realize how old I am. I'm probably the oldest one who's being interviewed for this position.
We didn't ask any ages.
I know you didn't, but I probably am. But as far as I know, yes.
Okay. All right. Great. That was the last of it.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much, Mel, for coming in. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your
pleasure.
time and your willingness to apply for this wonderful position.
I couldn't, shall we say, want to serve with 2 other commissioners personally. I'm serious. This has been a breath of fresh air as far as I'm concerned.
Good. Thank
After
you.
20 years. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mel.